Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned. Because it's Wednesday, that means it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I'll talk about a certain comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. Steve Donoghue over on his channel will talk about the same comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. It is our world's finest team up that we do once a week. And this week, we've got something particularly interesting, Roger. This week we're talking about Tarzan. And we're going to be revisiting the Joe Kubert years of Tarzan. We have talked about the Joe Kubert years of Tarzan before, where we did kind of an overview 100 years ago or whenever it was that we did that. But today we're going to focus on the origin of Tarzan. When DC Comics first got the license to do Tarzan comic books, and they took over the Tarzan comic book. Now, Tarzan has been in comics in one form or another forever, pretty much from the start of Tarzan, practically. He was a newspaper strip, there was a big Sunday strip, and that is actually one of the things that influenced Joe Kubert to become a comic book artist. And all of the issues that we're going to be talking about today were illustrated and written by Joe Kubert, who is a tremendously talented and influential figure in comics. I can't remember everything he drew. He did Hawkman, the Silver Age Hawkman, which is one of my favorite comics. He did Enemy Ace. He did Sergeant Rock. I think Sergeant Rock might be his greatest work, but it's hard to say because he did so many great things. And he did Tarzan, and Tarzan certainly is considered one of the greatest things he ever did. And he also opened a school for cartoonists for cartooning in comics, which was always advertised in the comics I used to read. He was amazing, Joe Kubert. And he loved Tarzan. He absolutely loved Tarzan. And so when DC got the license to do Tarzan comics, and Carmine Infantino, who was the editor, I believe, at the time, asked Kubert to do Tarzan, he jumped at the chance, of course. And so they had to decide when they were taking over Tarzan how they were going to do it. I forget who had the license to do it right before, because everybody's done Tarzan. I can't remember if it was Gold Key or Charlton, one of those, maybe. And DC Comics just picked it up right from there. It actually continued the numbering from the previous publisher. So this is a great trade paperback that Dark Horse Comics published, because Dark Horse Comics for a while had the license to Tarzan, and they did a few really nice comics, some great stuff when they had the Tarzan license. And this is the best thing they ever did. They reprinted Joe Kubert's years in some hardcover editions that were really expensive, but this one was, at the time that it came out, $30. I'm sure it's more expensive than that now, but it's wonderful. This collects the Joe Kubert years of Tarzan that we are going to be talking about, the first 4 issues. Because the first 4 issues tell the origin of Tarzan. They decided once they took over that they were just going to start with the origin of Tarzan. And it was left up to Joe Kubert how they were going to do that. So this starts off with issue 207, but it says the first issue. Actually, originally it said the first DC issue, but since this was published by Dark Horse, they had to change that. I'm almost certain it said the first DC issue. And it's wonderful. So let's take a look at how this starts. So Joe Kubert began the run revisiting the origin of Tarzan by adapting the first novel, the original novel of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Great cover, by the way. The ape is a little odd because it's a little difficult to tell what species that ape is. But then Tarzan was raised by by a species of ape that was not that were not gorillas and they were not chimpanzees. They were like some other mysterious race of apes. And we begin with this young woman who's looking for her missing father, and she's being guided into the jungle by this old guy. And it's just a beautiful opening page. What a wonderful artist this guy is, Joe Kubert. And then they're attacked by a leopard, and then out of nowhere leaps Tarzan. But she doesn't know it's Tarzan. She doesn't know who this guy is, because she's never heard of him before. But out leaps Tarzan and takes care of this leopard and takes him out. As soon as the leopard is down, he gives his ape war cry and immediately vanishes back into the jungle. And she's like, who the hell was that guy? And the guide is like, okay, here's the story like I heard it. And so he knows the whole story. So he's going to give her the whole story of Tarzan, beginning with Tarzan's parents on the ship. So they're on a ship, and there are Tarzan's parents there. Now, the way Kubert draws Tarzan's parents, it's a little different. Tarzan's father, he looks just like what you would expect an Englishman in 1888 to look like. I guess I always pictured Tarzan's father looking a little bit more like Tarzan, but Kubert probably has it right, because he draws him just like an Englishman from 1888 with the mustache and the whole look. Now, there's a mutiny on this ship led by Black Michael. He's Black Michael with the big mustache, and he's the lead mutineer. Now, earlier, Lord Clayton, Tarzan's father, did a favor to one of the sailors, so they're not just slaughtered like the rest of the crew. And instead, they are marooned on the coast of Africa. And so they're marooned there, far away from civilization. And what a wonderful panel there. I mean, he just gets the mood and the feeling just right of these two just being marooned on the coast of Africa. And so he's like, you know what? We can't give in. We've got to survive, because she is pregnant with his child. So she's going to have a baby. They have to figure out a way to survive. And so he becomes quite industrious and builds a cabin and all that. And this is very, very faithful to the novel. The whole story, it's very faithful to the novel. We see the tribe of apes that raises Tarzan, and Kala's baby is lost right there. So she is the ape that takes Tarzan once Tarzan's father is tragically killed, as he is here. Again, just beautiful drawings done by Kubert. And there's Kala running off with little Tarzan. And then we get Tarzan's childhood, just beautifully illustrated. He throws in a little bit of Jungle Tales of Tarzan at one point when he's going over Tarzan's youth. And it's just beautifully drawn. And so the first part ends at that point. This is the cover to the second DC issue there, with Tarzan's mother being killed by the African hunter. Start off with that splash page, and so the guide is continuing with his story of Tarzan and the framing device, and it's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful version of this story. And Kubert, who has such respect for the material, he gets all the great moments in here from the book, including the part where he finds his father's cabin and rather remarkably, without knowing the English language, manages to teach himself to read, which is one of the more unlikely moments in the book, but that's okay. We'll give it a pass because because it's also great and entertaining. His first experience with the storm there, it's just gorgeous, this whole thing. And so we go through Tarzan's childhood. This is the most traumatic moment from Tarzan's childhood, when his mother is killed by the African hunter, and Tarzan goes after him to get revenge, which he does. But he also, in doing that, he finds out about the Africans' weapons, so he gains a bow and arrow and learns how to use it. But then, in part 3, get to cover the cover to the third issue there, we get Jane, because Jane and her father end up in the jungle, much the same way Tarzan did. Look at that. That's awesome. So Tarzan has discovered a locket. He's discovered his father's diary, which later on becomes important to identify Tarzan. And he finds these mysterious people rowing to the coast of Africa off their ship. That's him. He's about 18 or 19 years old at this point when he first meets Jane. Again, there's been another mutiny. And we meet the current Lord Clayton here, and Jane, and Tarzan's father, and all the people that we recognize from the original novel. Again, like I said, very faithful adaptation. Jane is, of course, kidnapped by an ape. Tarzan has to go after her, and that is how they get to know each other in the jungle. Of course, she immediately falls for Tarzan. And then we conclude in the 4th issue with the French officer D'Arnaud, who arrives on the scene, but is captured by natives right there, and has to be rescued by Tarzan. It's a very harrowing scene when D'Arnaud is put on the stake there, because of course he is, and Tarzan has to rescue him, which he does. So Tarzan rescues him, but it's going to take a while for him to recover, and in the meantime, Jane has to deal with Clayton, who wants to marry her, even though, of course, at this point she's in love with Tarzan. And they leave. Jane and Clayton leave because D'Arnaud is thought to be lost, and Tarzan has to get him back to civilization, which he does. And he is introduced to civilization, and there is civilized Tarzan. He's not really civilized, but remember, at the end of the first novel of Tarzan, he goes to America and ends up rescuing Jane and Jane's family from a fire. But then he ends up not being with Jane. And he ends up going back to the jungle. And in this series of comics, we have some random adventures of Tarzan after that, which are beautifully drawn. In fact, I think this comic book ends up just looking better and better as time goes on, as Kubert got more used to drawing Tarzan and the animals in the jungle. It's great stuff. Eventually, Joe Kubert illustrates the second novel, The Return of Tarzan, which is just amazing. It could be the best adaptation of The Return of Tarzan in comics that I've ever seen. There's really no reason to redo it after that, but it's been redone. But that was amazing. But it was a fantastic start to this series. The DC version of Tarzan was just fantastic. It didn't last forever. Eventually, Marvel took over Tarzan for a short time. And that was not entirely successful, although that had some great issues drawn by John Buscema. But that whole series had some issues. And eventually it went to Dark Horse when this was published. And then it went to Dynamite. I don't know who has the rights to Tarzan now. But unfortunately, there are no Tarzan comics at the moment that I'm aware of. It would be great if Tarzan can get a regular series again, but I don't know that that'll ever happen. We'll see. It would be nice if it did. But this was amazing, and I kind of wish that this volume would be reprinted. But again, I don't know who has the rights to it. It'd be great if this could be reprinted in a nice, oversized hardcover. It's beautiful enough for that to happen, but I don't know if it'll ever happen. We'll see. Okay, guys, that's all I have for you this week. I will catch you next time.